To follow on from our video about what are the best nocks for target archery, now we're going to stay on the arrows and we're going to talk about what are the best fletchings. Because arrows are the most important thing. One of my early coaches said to me, if all your arrows aren't the same, how can you expect them to go into the same place? Now that sounds like a really basic, obvious thing, but from that early age, it got me to focus on, if all of my arrows aren't the same, it doesn't really matter what I do, they're not going to go in the same place in the target. So any time and a little bit of money spent maintaining your arrows is money well spent that's going to help you hopefully score even more. We're going to start by talking about outdoor target arrows. So typically carbon arrows or carbon aluminium arrows for shooting long distance. So for this, we're looking for a fletching that's low drag because we've got to maintain the arrow speed all the way to the target. We need to obviously help the arrow stay true, stay correct and fly straight. And we want something to be a little bit durable because they're going into the target next to each other. And any damage on your fletching really causes your arrows to go off left and right and all over the place. Fletching quality is more important than 50 and 70 meters than anything else. For compound archery, typically shooting at 50 meters outside, I've got two recommendations. First off, it's the Boning X vane. This is a really good plastic vane with a big foot on it. So the part of the fletching that's sticking to the arrow is nice and large and really adheres to the arrow well. The only little negative I have about these vanes is they're a little bit stretchy. So you can feel the fletching stretch. When another arrow goes next to it, it can just pick up on it and damage the fletching. So you end up shooting your own fletchings. So when you go down to score, the arrow is stuck through the side of the fletching. Now, you could say that's fine because the arrows were grouping and it's tight. But with these vanes, I never really get them fall off, but I probably find that my top champion archers are changing the vanes more often because they do damage them. But you could often say, well, you're only damaging them if you're putting the arrows next to each other, and if you're putting the arrows next to each other, everything's good. My second choice for compound target is these Eastern tight flight fletchings, the 200 or the 2-inch size. I find these to be super accurate, super consistent. But the only negative with these, and yes, there's always a trade-off. There's always pros, there's always cons. These, I never really shoot holes in these, so I never really damage the fletchings, or should I say, my top champion archers never really damage the fletchings. But the fletchings have got a slightly smaller foot, and with these fletchings, I find that you're slightly more likely to lose a fletching. So it's always these pros and cons. Normally, if it's left to me to make the choice, I choose the Eastern tight flights, but I really don't mind. That's just my preference. If someone has a preference on the color or the shape, no problem at all. Both of these arrows are about $30 for a bag or a box of 100. So it's not an expensive choice. Looking after your fletchings and making sure your arrows are always as new when it comes to fletchings is not something that's going to typically break your bank. So it's something I recommend all competitive archers do. Look after your arrows and they will look after you. Now, when it comes to recurve outdoor target shooting, anything over like 30 meters to 70 meters or even to 90 meters for you old school people, for me, there's only one choice. I thought I didn't have any in my collection, but I found a couple tucked away in my box, and this is the Range-O-Matic spin wing vane. And you can see here I've got a group. I thought there was one fletching in there, but actually when I pull it apart, I've got four in here. They're super thin, they're super light, they're super fast, and they have won more Olympic medals than anything else. Now, some people I see have sort of stopped using these because there's more impressive colors, there's clear colors and all sorts of other fletchings out there. But really, when you look at it, when you look at the best team in the world, the Korean archery team, 99% of the time I see them, they're still using spin wings. I think something like 90% of all Olympic gold medals have been won with the spin wing. But because it was invented in something like 1984, 1986, it's become a bit boring and people want to use something new and exciting. But when you look at it, if you really think you know better than the top Korean archers, well, great, you go and make your own choice. But when the best in the world are using the same product year after year after year to deliver success, and you're going to go and buy a different fletching because it comes in a clear purple color, just have a think. Really, this is the benchmark. And when other people do use other fletchings, they'll normally tell you, oh, they're just as good as spin wings. If they're just as good as spin wings, why are you taking this risk to try something else when the gold standard fletching is there at the same price or probably less? And I want to be clear, I'm not sponsored by them. I just see as a coach what delivers success, and it's painfully obvious. There's absolutely no reason, as I can see it, to not use the spin wing 1.75 original fletching. Okay, it's just the most successful fletching ever, but because it's 40 or 50 years old, people have sort of lost interest in it because it's a little bit boring. But to me, there's nothing boring with winning gold medals. Now we're going to finish off by talking about indoor shooting. If you're someone who focuses on the indoor season, shoots large aluminium arrows trying to get those extra few points, for me, if you're putting in all that effort and all that practice trying to be successful indoors, the number one fletching by a reasonable amount is a 4 or 5 inch feather fletching. Okay? Because we've got such a big arrow, because we've only got a short distance, so outdoors we want the low drag fletching so it doesn't take too much speed out of the arrow. Indoors we want the high drag fletching so in the shortest distance possible it can straighten up your arrow, correct for any bad releases or bow arm movement, and get the arrow flying straight, because we've only got 18 meters to do it. And also because the arrow is bigger, the fletching is bigger, if anything hits the bow or your hand on the way past, if something's gone wrong, you want it to be the most forgiving fold away fletching you can. Now, there is a sacrifice you make when you use these fletchings, because they're a little bit harder to buy the fletchings, a little bit more expensive. Instead of being like $30 for 100, they're going to maybe be $60 for 50. Fletching them takes a considerable amount of time. When I make them myself, I will leave each fletching in the clamp for 45 minutes. So the glue is absolutely set, because if not, when you take off the fletching clamp, the fletching will just curl up and move. And we need to make sure all our fletchings are straight and they're consistently put on. And by straight, I mean the fact the fletching itself isn't curled from one end to the other. I don't mean straight on the shaft. We can have a little bit of angle on the shaft, and we will cover that in a future video on how to fletch your arrows. But the feathers, they're high drag, they fold away if they hit anything, but you have to be really careful when you store them, because if they're stored touching each other, they'll end up losing their shape. So you have to transport them very carefully. If you're in high humidity, or heaven forbid any rain, they're destroyed, they're gone. So it is a difficult thing to use, but I do believe if you are absolutely trying to get every single point to win that World Indoor Championships, that's what you need to do. It's what I used when I qualified first at the World Indoor Championships with the Recurve bow. It's what I used when I shot a one-off perfect score in Las Vegas with my compound bow. It's also what I used, you know, but you have to put the work in, the extra effort, so it comes at a price. Okay, I hope that's useful today. If you haven't seen it already, we've got the video on what are the best nocks. And of course, like and subscribe. And if anyone is interested in any one-to-one coaching sessions, the link is in my description, and it'd be great to talk. All right, good shooting. Talk soon.